Welcome back. Social media hate content has reached an alarming level. The year-on-year rise, as per data revealed by the tech giants, has seen over 80% increase in hate posts, which means people are turning to social media in droves to vent their anger, their animosity, in some cases frustration, in some other cases to selectively target certain people. There is verbal lynching, there is unbridled vitriol being spread online. And all this has led to a larger social fallout. It's the culture of hate that spreads like wildfire, polarization peaks, and what you get at the end of it all is a social fabric in tatters. Already, economists have pointed out how a polarized society is bad for business. There's bound to be an economic impact as well. But keeping that aside, why are we bringing this up today? Let me go across to my colleague Raksha, who will take us through the data that has been released on how there is an exponential rise, Raksha, in hate posts.
That's right, Afrida. Meta, earlier known as Facebook, has released a report recently where they are saying that in the month of April, as compared to March, the amount of hate posts have increased by 80% for Facebook and 86% on Instagram. So 53,000 such reports of hate speech content has been reported on Facebook, which is 82% higher than what was reported in the month of March. And for Instagram, there are 77,000 such posts. And this, we are only talking about posts which are in forms of photos or videos as well as comments. But what we are not looking at are the DMs, the direct messages, which is what we are seeing being shared by a lot of Instagram influencers or Facebook personalities, where they say that whatever they are posting, whether it is anything to do with body shaming, whether it's anything to do with any kind of progressive thinking mostly, or any kind of leanings in terms of ideologies, there are so many messages as well as vilifying comments that people receive. And you know, while we discussed also, Afrida, that how social media is like a mirror reflecting society, but this massive spike in hate speech is something that is a very worrying figure. It is giving this space for users to share their comments, and it's both Facebook and Instagram have a lot of content violations in place. If I list a couple of them out for you, anything related to organ selling, anything which is mildly pornographic, anything which is anything to do with a drug cartel or organizing a mass killing, all of these are identified by the platform and taken down even before they are reported, as soon as they are identified as hate speech content. But there's a long way to go, and of course these numbers are alarming, Afrida.
Absolutely. The numbers are alarming, and I want to bring out another aspect that we thank you very much for joining us. Another aspect here is that, you know, only recently, and this is on the singer and rapper Badshah, who has put out a post just today saying he has received a hate message saying, "Tum kab maroge." This message came to him on his post, which he wrote as a tribute to KK, the singer who just passed away. And on his tribute, he receives a message saying, "Tu kab marega," rather crude way of putting it. Now, this is the level that we have reached where, you know, all decorums are breached. There is no sense of decency anymore in how people interact online. But there's a larger issue here on how can we regulate this. Let me introduce, joining us here on the program, NS Nappinai, Advocate of the Supreme Court of India and founder of Cyber Saathi. Also joining us, Dilip Cherian, founder of Perfect Relations. I'm hoping also to be joined, and I think we also have Mr. Samir Soni, who is an actor, film and television actor. Very good evening to all of you. Thank you for joining us here on the program. I would first like to hear experiences from my guests on whether they have faced online hate. Should I start with you, Samir Soni? Tell us, a lot of celebrities, actors, they are often at the receiving end of hate for one reason or the other. I just cited the example of Badshah. What has been your personal experience? Very good evening to all of you.
Good evening. I'm no different. I think anyone who's in the public eye is an easy target, is a soft target. And as a result, I was on Twitter, and I think when Sushant Singh Rajput case was going on, I said a few things and I took a stand. And yeah, I was trolled really badly. I had to get out of Twitter. And then I was just like, never went back to it really, thinking, what's really the point? Because anyone can say anything, and no matter how many people are you going to block? So I had that experience, and I had to leave Twitter for that, and that sort of was a wake up call.
So that happens often enough, isn't it? And of course, I do understand it's a matter of personal choice. There are a lot of people who believe that they don't even want to go there. That is one area that they have just cut out from their lives, like you said you've done. So I want to again ask Mr. Dilip Cherian as well this question. Because I saw that there were some hate messages directed towards you and you've also dealt with it. But what is the best way to, first of all, deal with a situation like this? Let's first address that, because it is rampant and the figures, as we are showing our viewers, are astronomical in terms of the number of hate mongers and the troll armies who are out there, with their verbal lynching day in and day out.
Thank you, Afrida. I think there are two rules that I follow. And yes, I've been the recipient of hate speech, but hate speech is usually when you express a strong counterintuitive opinion, which is what I think social media allows us to do and entitles us to do. The first rule I follow is that if the person who is spewing hate speech uses obnoxious or abusive language, ignore. The second rule I follow is that if they continue to go after you, after the first time or the second time, check how many followers they have. And you will understand that most of them are totally irrelevant in the social media space. There is no other rule that you need to take, because 95% of those who spew hate have neither followers nor do they have any real content on their timelines except for spewing hate all around. So I think that at this point of time, we have to distinguish between those who want to engage angrily with you and those who want to just troll you. And the secret of being, shall I say, to a large extent immune on social media is to be able to distinguish between one and the other. The third thing is that always be measured in what you want to respond. Respond minimally, respond only once, and report after that. So I think the algorithms are smart enough to be able to pick out those who are out there to pick fights. Remember that social media is a place, unfortunately, where anger seems to be the default mode. Anger, everybody wants to be, raving and ranting. Hate has become a habit, and anger is the default mode. We have to recognize that. That is something that Meta needs to understand, and Twitter has attempted to control.
Yes, so, Samir Soni wants to come in. Go ahead.
Yeah, I with what Mr. Cherian said, I totally agree, and I tried doing that. And until then, I realized that now social media has become so powerful that this is not just an individual person who is abusing or is, saying obscenities. It's actually used as a platform or as a group to suppress voices. It could be a political party or political inclination or a community, and they become sort of this one huge gang, which they use then to suppress any voice that comes, which holds a counter view to what they have. So it's not just one person. It'll be like if you say something pro this, there will be not necessarily just a political party. It could be any agenda, and they'll have this horde of people. So it's not just one man. It's just this. They're backed by thousands and millions of people who are just paying them that, okay, look, we need to suppress this voice. So it becomes kind of tricky to kind of check how many followers they have.
Yes.
So that
is where I would, yes, absolutely, you're right. And which is why now the discussion is around the bots and the fake accounts. And therefore, I would like to bring in NS Nappinai into this. The problem is diagnosed. The extent of the problem is known. And with the recent expose and all the reports that we have done as well on this, Twitter deal has got stuck on this point on the bots and accounts which are not real, but they are causing the bulk of the problem. Is there a solution in sight, V.S. Nappinai?
Finding solutions for something like this is.
Okay, I think we have lost the line. Okay, carry on.
Can you hear me now? I hope I'm on.
Sorry, yes, carry on.
Sorry about the connection. So I was just saying that finding solutions for a problem like this is not as simplistic as it may seem. But that should not stop us from trying to find solutions. We have to start taking it in baby steps. The very first step I would suggest is social media grew as a self-regulated mechanism. So self-regulation as the first level of protective measure would be the first bet. And Facebook, Twitter, or any other big tech or social media platform or chat apps or microblogging sites are and where, and that's where the emphasis is, we're already aware of this kind of toxic content. It's been written about, it's been researched, and they're aware of it. The issue then boiled down to finding solutions, and you have two different kinds of solutions. You can have a tech-enabled solution, which is where AI plays a role, and that can bring in, and you have heard me say this earlier too, when it comes to free speech, I'm all for free speech. But free speech does not entitle anybody to commit crimes or to spew venom. Therefore, if you can have what is called as an active filtration process, and this is AI which is already developed in today's world. If you can adapt that to first either quarantine content which is identified as toxic, verify and then upload, or just block and let the person who has uploaded then have a mechanism to object if it is genuine content.
But who has the bigger responsibility here, V.S. Nappinai? Is it the social media giants? Who should, the onus should be on them? Is it the government of the day? Is it the individual who have to do self-regulation? Who should take the bulk of the responsibility?
When I say self-regulation, I'm talking about the platforms. And why do we have to choose, Afrida? Between the government and the platforms, they both have responsibility. With the user, you can't put an onus on the user. You can say use technology safely, be responsible when you're using it, and be cautious that if you're going to violate the law of the land, you will be punished. But for the last part to work, the government agencies have to kick in. Enforcement has to kick in to show that internet or online platforms do not give you any kind of an anonymity cloak. You are not so just.
Let's at least appreciate the fact that here you have Meta, Facebook, and Instagram coming out with this report, in a way, coming out clean, saying, listen, there is this level of hate content out there. So in a way, also perhaps seeking to share the responsibility. Let's together find solutions. Samir Soni, when you hear something like this, what happened to Badshah, for instance, a well-meaning post paying a tribute to a departed singer draws this kind of a toxic response. Obviously, as a human being, you get affected by it, isn't it? That you are living in a society of this nature. What does it do to an individual?
You have to come to terms with reality. And the reality is that there is no truth anymore. It's just a perception. In terms of it's what's somebody's social views are being said over and over again. And you have to come to terms with it, not to take it seriously, really. I mean, as hard as it is, I remember earlier I was pretty vocal, I was pretty passionate about. But now you realize it's just part of a giant game, because even the platform owners, we don't know where their bias lies. What is according to them hate speech? What is according to them that? And then that might conflict with the norm of the nation. So you really have to develop a thick skin, especially if you're a public figure. But to me, is that you have to understand that all these social platforms, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Twitter, they all are being used and abused, and you have to be very selective in what you take away from that, and take everything not just with a pinch of salt, with buckets of salt. When you're putting yourself out there, you're putting yourself, for brickbats and bouquets. So I think, like I said, we're living in an age of information revolution, and there is no truth anymore.
What worries me the most, you're right, and what worries me the most is the younger generation. I want to go to Dilip Cherian and also to V.S. Nappinai on this, that, the fact is that our younger generation, our children are exposed now to this kind of a vitriol, and they're growing up, obviously this is a generation of the digital generation. We call them digital natives these days. They operate out of their laptops and their digital devices. There is only so much controlling you can do. Now, if all of this is online, how do we protect our children? I mean, is there a way out? Dilip Cherian, what do you think?
Frida, it's quite coincidental that we're talking about this, because this afternoon I was having lunch with my granddaughter, who's 12 years old, and she asked me whether, Nanu, do you know about cancel culture? I just looked aghast at my daughter, at my wife, and I said, what is this world coming to? 12-year-olds are asking you, do you know about cancel culture? And digital natives or not, these are children who are being exposed to the whole concept of hate online far too early. I worry about it.
Absolutely.
She does not have access to social media except for 1 hour of the day when she can chat with her friends and things like that. But these are the kinds of things they're talking about. That worries me. But I think that the point that is being made of using AI, etc., is extremely valid. Self-regulation by these big companies is actually easier than they make it out to be. Their anxiety is numbers. Their anxiety is that they might lose large numbers if they remove the trolls and the armies. My worry is that the individual troll is not the problem. The problem is coordinated paid armies, of which there are many in the country.
Yes, that of course is a matter of huge concern. If the coordinated paid armies like Mr. Samir Soni and Mr. Dilip Cherian is pointing out, NS Nappinai, your quick last word to round up the conversation on where we are at the moment and how we can do some course correction, especially on the point of protecting the younger generation.
Well, the first thing I would say is to make them aware that these are threats or vulnerabilities that are there. So if I tell you about doxing, dissing, griefing, catfishing, all this is a new dictionary that's coming out there, right? So one is to know that this is a threat that's there. Two is to make them understand that it doesn't really matter in terms of, if you're being trolled, if you're being catfish. So to what extent does it really affect you psychologically, right? And yes. The third is what I was trying to close out on in the earlier point also is, I pointed out the first aspect, which is a technology-enabled or technology-mediated solution. Law definitely has a role to play. If you set out very clearly what amounts to an offense, and I wanted to take Samir Soni's example also forward, this is an actual case that happened in the US, where a girl was not just trolled by one individual, but by multiple people. And in a way, they were all set up to troll the girl, and including with comments about, why are you still alive? Why don't you just go kill yourself? And she actually did it. And then a private member's bill was moved for laws for cyberbullying. It's called the Megan Mayer bill. And that didn't go through. However, that was the trigger for the US states, because unlike in India and the US, you have state laws. So now more than 40 states have cyberbullying laws to combat situations like this. So law plays a deterrent role, which is unfortunately missed out today, because you don't have a specific law which tells you that trolling is an offense. All these fancy words, which I just pointed out to you, are all just ultimately bullying processes of different kinds. And you need to tell people that it is a crime, it is an offense, and you cannot get away with it. And that itself will play a deterrent role.
The worry is they are growing in numbers. The worry is that the number of hate mongers, the online bullies are increasing. That breed is increasing, and we cannot allow that to happen. Okay, quick last word, Samir Soni.
Yeah, I think here is probably a far more general opinion is that we talk about freedom of speech and we speak of that as the ultimate sign of democracy. I think we need to instill in people the different dimension, namely the responsibility that comes with it. We cannot just be, talking about, oh, this is freedom of speech, because the youngsters, what they see, and they will follow. we have to instill in them that, yeah, freedom of speech is fine and dandy, but you have to be responsible for what you say, and which has to come from top down, including
Yes.
our, public figures, politicians, whoever. That
Yes,
has to
it's
come
a
down.
matter of huge concern. We cannot afford to look the other way, which is why I decided that we should discuss this and we should get people to sit up and take notice that this is happening. We cannot escape it. We need to also respond and report, which is important so that this gets addressed. Thanks very much for joining us, NS Nappinai, Dilip Cherian and Samir Soni, for giving us your time. Let's take a short break here. On the other side, Maharashtra Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray is now engaged in a review meeting. We'll tell you all about that in just a bit after this break.